All right, let's talk about AI, but specifically for nonprofits. There's this really fascinating framework for navigating it all. And, it boils down to one central tension. How do you use all this powerful new tech without losing the one thing that matters most? Trust. So let's dive right in. So, right at the heart of this whole thing is a core dilemma. On one hand, you've got AI promising just incredible efficiency and insights. But on the other hand, it poses a very, very real threat to the authenticity and the human connection that, let's be honest, nonprofits are built on. So, how do you even begin to manage that? Let's make this real for a second. Just imagine an AI could write the most perfect, emotionally moving, hyper targeted fundraising email you've ever seen, and it just brings in tons of donations. The question isn't, can it do that? It's, should it? And that's exactly the kind of tough spot this framework is designed to help with. And wow, the stakes really couldn't be clearer. Look at this. On one side, you have the amazing promise of efficiency and scale like we've never seen before. But then you look at the other side, and the peril is just as big. Losing donor trust, risking your authenticity, and even potentially harming the dignity of the very people you're trying to help. This isn't just some tech problem, it's a deeply ethical one. So, to get through this maze, the framework gives us one single foundational principle. Think of it as a golden rule that's going to guide every other decision. It's basically the North Star for using AI ethically in this space. And here it is. Seriously, if you remember just one thing from all of this, make it this sentence right here. AI can help with your work, for sure. But the very moment it starts to touch things that could influence a donor's decision to give, the stories, the testimonials, the emotional appeals, that content absolutely, positively must be real. No exceptions. Okay, so how do you actually put that golden rule into practice? Well, the framework builds on it with a set of principles that are completely non-negotiable. It's best to think of these as the guardrails on the highway, just keeping you on the right road. First up, we've got the principles of truth. This sounds straightforward, but it is so, so vital. You cannot use AI to create a false impression of reality, period. That means no fabricated quotes, no making up names for so-called composite stories, and absolutely no faking your impact data. It all has to be real. Next up, authenticity. Look, AI is an amazing tool for convenience, but it can never, ever be a substitute for lived experience. A real story has to stay a real story. And this also touches on a hugely important point about beneficiary dignity. You just can't use AI to create a fake image of someone you're helping if anyone could mistake it for a real person. And finally, we have the principles of process. This is all about building that human safety net. A real person has to be involved in what they call high-trust moments. Your audience needs to know if they're talking to a bot. And this one is crucial. If the AI is ever unsure about something, its one and only job is to stop and pass the problem to a human. Okay, so those are the principles. But what does this actually look like in your day-to-day work? Let's take all this theory and translate it into practice. We'll look at some really common tasks that nonprofits do all the time. This table here makes it super clear. So can you use AI to help edit a real, verified story? Yep, with human review. But can you use it to just invent a story from scratch? Absolutely not. You can use it to draft a factual social media caption, but not to create a fake photo that looks totally real. You see the pattern here, right? The line gets drawn the second that simulation could be mistaken for reality, especially when money is involved. And here's a perfect example of what they call a critical fail, using an AI-generated photo of a person to represent a beneficiary in a fundraising appeal. This just blows right past the authenticity boundary in the most dangerous way, because you're using a complete fabrication to get an emotional, financial response. This is a huge no. It's definitely prohibited. And this brings us right back to that critical idea, the human safety net. You can't just set up an AI and let it run wild in a high-trust environment. It just doesn't work that way. You have to have clear checks and balances in place. So, how do you decide what to do in the moment? Well, you use this simple gut check. It's called the authenticity boundary test. And honestly, it might be the most practical tool in this whole framework. You just have to ask yourself, would a reasonable person look at this piece of content and assume it's a real person, a real event, or a real quote? If the answer is yes, then it simply has to be real. It all comes together in this simple 4-step process for your team to use. First, you assess reality. Then, you evaluate the risk. Third, you apply the right safeguards. And what's the most important step? Number 4. When in doubt, you always escalate to a human.
All right, let's pull all of this together. If you're gonna use AI, what's the bottom line checklist you should have ready to go in your mind?
This is your big takeaway. Use AI for efficiency, for speed, for helping you draft and summarize things, for data analysis, for all those low-risk tasks. But do not use it to represent real people, to drive emotional giving, for those crucial donor relationship moments, or, and this is a big one, for telling the impact stories that are the very heart and soul of your mission. Those have to remain human. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This technology is only going to get smarter, more powerful, and way more convincing. The lines are going to get even blurrier. So the real question isn't just about what we do today. It's about how we constantly recommit to protecting that human, authentic core of our work, tomorrow and for all the years to come.